G'day, part 2 of making an offer on an apartment. So in the last podcast that you saw previously, we went over the first page, which is this one here, and now we're going over to the general terms of sale. Now there are 17 general terms of sale, and these terms are put under numbers, and then basically they're in there to protect the purchaser's rights and the vendor's rights, and to outline what actually has to happen in the conveyance or the change of ownership, basically. So basically there's 17. I'll very briefly go through each one, otherwise we'll be here for a very long time. And if you want to go through them further, I'd recommend that you read them or go through them with your lawyer. Anyway, so you've got general terms of sale. You've got your definitions page. It's obviously just saying when they're using particular words what they mean. For example, I've got some highlighted here. Some that say Building Act, that means Building Act 1991, so everything that comes under the Building Act applies when you use those terms. Another obvious one is LIM. Now, that means Land Information Memorandum, so that means when you want a LIM report, it's said LIM in the Sale and Purchase Agreement, but that's what it means. OIA consent, that means Overseas Investment Act 2005, so that's if you're buying a huge, over a certain value of property or a type of property, etc., and you're an overseas person, for example. Unit title, now that means the unit title under the Unit Titles Act, so that applies quite a lot when, or usually when obviously you're buying an apartment. Rules, now that means by the corporate rules under the Unit Titles Act, so that obviously applies as well. Working day means any day of the week where it's obviously not a statutory holiday or a weekend. So that's pretty obvious. Now I'm just going to go through very briefly to give you an idea of each one. So the deposit, the purchaser shall pay the deposit to the vendor or the vendor's agent immediately upon execution of this agreement. If not paid on the due date for payment, the vendor may at any time therefore serve on the purchaser notice requiring payment. So you sort of see what I mean. Each one is going in and outlining what has to be done. I mean, a lot of it can be seen as common sense, but it's very important. That's why it's a contract that they've put in place. So number 3, possession and settlement. Unless particulars of the tenancy are included in this agreement, the property is sold with vacant possession. I mean, that's pretty obvious. If the property is sold with vacant possession, then subject to the rights of any tenants of the property. So that's what it means when, if there's a tenant in the property, a tenancy agreement is how I word it in a simple form. A tenancy agreement is more powerful than a sale and purchase agreement. So if there's a tenant in there, you have to give them reasonable notice. Okay, then you've got possession shall be given and taken on settlement date. It's obvious. Blah, blah, blah. So you're getting the gist of it. So we'll just go through very quickly the 17 of them. Risk and insurance. The property and chattels shall remain the risk of the vendor until possession is given and taken. So for example, even once the agreement's gone unconditional, the chattels and the property, it still hasn't changed ownership. So if a fire occurred, or if something was included in the sale, a washing machine or something like that, that broke down, well then that's the responsibility of the vendor, the owner, not the purchaser until that settlement has occurred. Then you've got obviously your title and boundaries. And now that means the purchaser is deemed to have accepted the vendor's title. So that means when you purchase it and you got unconditional, you accept the title. That is correct, unless if you do an objection or requisition, which means your lawyer has an ability to object to something on the title. That could be an easement or anything that they think that is incorrect. And if it is incorrect, the owner has a certain amount of time to rectify it, for example. Okay, so number 6, you've got vendors and warranties and undertaking. So the vendor warrants and undertakes that all at the state agreement the vendor has not, for example, have things owing on a property. So from any outstanding requirements under the Resource Management Act, for example. So they haven't done anything they should have done with the property and haven't disclosed it. So again, protecting you as a purchaser. Claims for compensation. A purchaser can claim the right to compensation under subclause 5.4 for an equitable set-off. Now if you go back to number 5, that means that, and we'll go down so I can show you. So if you go into there, now, so that means if you can see here 5.4 regarding misdescription. So that means if the property has been described differently, you can cancel it, or you can get a compensation for something that was described incorrectly. Anyway, we'll go back to where we were. Stop moving. Okay, so then we are back to, so we're now going down to agent. Okay, the vendor shall pay the agent's charges, including GST, for effecting such a sale if an agent is on the sale and purchase agreement. Goods and services tax, this agreement for the purchaser to pay any GST which is payable. I mean, if that's part of the agreement, then again, what I mentioned earlier in the last podcast about GST. So that's when you ask your accountant's advice before you go into the agreement. And zero rating, that's when you're dealing with a commercial aspect to the agreement. So the vendor warrants the statements on the front page regarding the vendor's GST, registration status in respect of the supply and the agreement is correct. So basically, if there's a commercial aspect to when you're purchasing an apartment, if it's in a hotel pool or something like that, what they've said is correct. Supplying of a going concern, that's again applies to when you're purchasing an apartment that has a commercial use, generally in a hotel lease or something like that. Limitation of liability, if any person enters the agreement as a trustee of a trust, then that person warrants that they actually have the power to do so. Counterparts, that means this agreement can be copied and signed and executed by the parties. So, that's when you email it to one person and then one person signs, and you email it to another person and another person signs. So that means it's still the same agreement. Otherwise, you've got some, vendors are over the world and their trustees are somewhere else, and, wives and husbands are apart, things like that. Okay, so then you've got your further terms of sale. That's where you put in your own terms. So here, because you always put the number 18 because you're after 17, and as you can see here, I've just put in 4, the ones that I recommend that you should always put in. I mean, a lawyer will always may ask you to put other ones in, but this one's just basically this agreement is conditional upon the purchase solicitor's approval, etc. This one, another one on this last 2 body corporate minutes and EGMs. This one on the building report. Another one on the vendor warrants that all appliances prior to settlement will be in working order. So anyway, I went through that very quickly, talked very fast, we had a lot to cover, but that basically covers the the second part of the podcast on really understanding a sale and purchase agreement before you go in and making that offer. Now, next podcast we're going to go through is obviously the chattels and this last page, which is involving GST and the signature of the vendor and the purchase. I hope that helps. Cheers.